What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Maker Mayhem. I am Dr. K, totally a real doctor for all your art skills and needs and things like that. Just kidding. Thanks for stopping in. Today we are going to talk about designing for real world situations. Right here, I've got a little bit of an example of a project that I worked on, I don't know, probably about 2 years ago now. I work for a company out here in Texas, and we make all kinds of cool stuff for splash pads, and we get a lot of cool customization requests. In addition, we also have standard products and things that we have to design to some specific tolerances to make sure that they are functional, safe, and all that. So I'm going to share some of those thoughts, and then we're going to hop into actually working on a project that I've got to get started here pretty soon, and talk about how to navigate all of that. So, without further ado, my name is Ricky. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to talk about design and design for the real world. I come from a background where I studied animation, and before that, I was actually a Marine Corps. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I served from 2005 to 2009, deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. Never ever thought that I was going to be working in the art field or anything like that, but here I am. So, over the course of my tenure working as an artist, somehow I managed to find myself in the realm of 3D printing and designing things that actually exist outside the computer. So I worked for a foundry. It used to be called Deep in the Heart Art Foundry out in Bastrop, Texas. They are now called Pyrology. They've done a lot of cool stuff. I was fortunate to be able to work with them for a period of time where I learned how to run their printers, run CNC mills, and all that cool stuff. Since then, I moved on and work on my own things, and I also work for another company where we make components for splash pads that can range from sizes all the way from 1 foot all the way up to, you name it, 20 feet if you wanted to. We carve it out of foam. We stick plumbing through there, run water through it, make it fun, and we're constantly running into cool situations because every town has their proclivities. They want something custom, they want something cool, they want something that fits them, and we are happy to design for them. However, when you're designing for the real world, and especially whenever there are children involved, you've got to make it safe and you have to make sure that it is functional. So that's where today's little demonstration comes in. About a year or so ago, we were approached by a group out of Oklahoma. I believe it was around Tulsa. Uh, they have an it's Elk City, Oklahoma. They have a lot, or they have an aquatics facility out there, and it is. I think that most of it was purchased or donated by the Lions Club out there, and so to commemorate this, all of this, they wanted to fashion some sort of water slide that kind of looked like the some of the old Elks or Elks Club. It's Elk City. I keep getting mixed up. The Lions Club had water fountains that basically it was for kids, but basically you lean in and it's like a lion's trying to bite your head off. Let me see if I can pull one up here real quick. So Lions Club water fountain. Let's see. Let me share my screen here real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Well, sorry, I'm kind of new to the whole streaming thing. Anyway, I'll drop some, and whenever I edit this, I'll show you some pictures. Anyway, it's a highly stylized thing. If you've ever seen one, it's really kind of cool. It's really odd if you see it out in the wild, and there are several different iterations of them. So they came to us and they wanted us to design a slide based around that. And so when we were presented with this project, uh, the salespeople had a certain idea about how things ought to be, and designers, clearly myself, had a completely different direction than I wanted to go in. And so, before I get into this, I kind of want to discuss a little bit about working with designers and engineers and things like that. This is something they don't really teach you in art school, so to speak. And you've got to sit there and you have to kind of be a liaison between all these departments, right? You've got your customer is going to be the salesperson or the engineer, and you got to be able to have discussions with them. And sometimes we can get so carried away with nuance and things like that whenever it comes to art that we kind of like don't know how to talk to these people, and it's not that hard, but you just gotta like stand your ground and do a good job, right? So whenever I was originally approached about this job, they wanted to take a different slide that we had, and they were like, "Hey, yeah, we're just gonna, it's stylized. Let's just take the current slide that we have, make its head large, and then run with it, right?" Well, that wasn't never going to work because they wanted something that was unique to them, and you can't get that by just like rehashing and kit bashing things. You have to actually take a customized approach to it. So that's what I ended up doing. I said, "Hey, thanks for your opinions. I'm going to sketch a few things out and I'm going to kick it back over to you." And whenever I did that, the client loved it. They raised the money for it, and they bought off on it, and we ran with it. This entire process probably took, I don't know, 2 days. Well, 2 days of sketching, or not even 2 days of sketching. I sketched something out in about, I don't know, half hour or so, kicked it over to them. They loved it, and then we had to turn around and make an actual model from it. So this is what that model ended up being. This actually went to production, and it is out in Elk City now. It doesn't quite look like this because they wanted just some plain yellow and black. They wanted it to be just yellow, just black, and just white and red, uh, which is okay. That's their prerogative. They're the ones that are spending the money to make this thing, and I was happy to help them. But the cool thing was is that this was all carved out on a machine, and let me see if I can pull this up. There we go. Much better. You ought to be able to see. Sorry, folks. Sorry, this is super boring. I'm figuring this out on the fly. All right, there we go. All right, you ought to be able to see that now. Sorry about that. So basically, they came through and they said, "Hey, I've got this guy here, and we want you to make something that's like this." And you can see, obviously, its pose is completely different. Our sales guy tried to make something of this, and I told him that it was never going to work. It would have had to be almost 20 feet tall for it to be able to even look correct. So I offered to change the pose, lay it down, and redirect some things, and they loved it. And now I think I can probably find, let's see, Elks City Lion slide. Elk City Lion slide. I know it's around here somewhere. Elk City Aquatic Center. So it's this place here. Let me see if I can find an actual picture of it. There we go. So this is it. This is the way it actually ended up looking. It's pretty large. Sits in some water. It's pretty cool to be able to see things that you worked on actually existing in the real world and figuring out these problems. What I love about sculpture is that I get to do problem solving on a different level. All right. I don't know who that is. Okay. All right. So back to reality here. Um, so I had to solve a lot of problems whenever it came to this. They have obviously something going into a swimming pool. You have to be able to manage all that. You have to be able to make it safe. And so I want to talk about how I approach a project and some tips and tricks and things like that along the way. So I'm going to hop over to another file that I have here. This is a starter kit template that I made based upon some slide components that we have, and so I just basically start out with where are my restricted zones and things like that. What are my things that I have to have in a slide? So there are things that you have to take into consideration in regard to safety standards. I am also a certified playground safety inspector, so I am trained to look at situations and kind of give advice on, like, hey, this might impel little Timmy, so you guys might want to change that. Obviously, I can't make or force anyone to do anything. All I can do is offer recommendations, and then in terms of product design and things like that, I can certainly make sure that on my end I do the best that I can to ensure that whatever design that I hand off is going to be as safe as possible. And so what we're looking at here right now is just kind of a template that we've come up with where we take into account that certain slides have to have certain components associated with them in order to be deemed safe, right? So the two top things that are going to end up hurting a child in on a playground are falls and what they call entanglements or entrapments. So we have to eliminate those things, and so we need to make sure that that we're not making something that is climbable or is designed to be climbable, which means that we have to eliminate flat surfaces. And this is just a guide, so I'll talk to you about how we eliminate those here pretty soon. But we have to eliminate flat surfaces to keep kids from, like, climbing up things. You're never going to keep them off of there, but you have to at least try, right? So if there's a will, there's a way. A kid's going to get up there, but still try to eliminate those factors, right? So we need a couple things. Keep them from falling off of this thing at height, and then the other thing is that we don't want them just sliding off the slide at an unsafe height, right? So these slides they're not super fast, and they're really not super tall. So I wouldn't be super worried about anything ever happening to anyone off of these. But basically, there's a PVC outlet here that shoots water down this at a high rate of speed, and sometimes it goes into a swimming pool. Other times it just goes onto a play surface down below. And the tools that we use to make sure that we can uh, ensure that we've done everything we can to keep kids from getting stuck and keep kids from getting injured as best as possible are here. These are ASTM uh, testing tools. This is for an entrapment. It's designed around is designed around the shape of a kid's head, how wide and the length from the chin, the point of the chin to the back of their skull, and it's about 9 inches in length from here to here. And it's basically so that you can make sure you can simulate, hey, if a kid's head can pass through this thing, then it shouldn't be possible for them to basically end up hanging themselves, right? And trust me, that has happened, and it is a horrific situation, and you don't want to be the one that's responsible for it. We also have right here, we have these protrusion tools. Basically, if there are washers or anything that sticks out of a surface, we got to make sure that one, somebody's not going to get their eye poked out, or if they run into it, make sure that they don't end up doing any kind of damage to their organs or anything like that. Lastly, I have this little 1-inch reference cube, and I put this here just to make sure that I always have a point of reference whenever I need to scale. Because sometimes whenever you hop from one program to the next, if you don't have your unit set up properly, and even if you do, sometimes things get off track. So I just make sure and I put a 1-inch reference cube in any project that I'm working on to make sure that I can just basically take that, scale this box to 1 inch, select the whole group, scale the box to 1 inch, and I will be at scale. So this particular setup has a couple of components. We have these walls here to make sure that, one, we account for a 4-inch lip that goes the entire distance of the slide. This is intended to keep kids from just like flying off, you know. We also have a barrier here that goes up. I believe it's don't quote me on it. 26 inches. I might be wrong. Anyway, it's got to go up a certain specific distance, and it's basically just intended to keep kids from getting up to a height and then toppling over and whacking their head on the ground. And that kids are pretty resilient, but we have to make sure that we take care of the little ones, because they can get injured and in bad situations super quickly, and we want to make sure that does not happen. So this is just kind of a guideline that we're going to be designing around. So a basic slide has to have a handful of components. It also has something that forces them to basically sit down, so that they don't get up here and they just fall head first. Hopefully, if they manage to do that, if we've done all this and they still manage to do that, that's well, we've done all we can. And then the other part is here. I have some anchor locations. So eventually, once we're done designing, we need to make sure that we're able to secure it to the ground. And we like to try and blend those things in as much as possible, but sometimes that doesn't really work out so well. So yeah, so let's start designing something. So I've got to redesign an old product that was originally always done by hand. And in fact, this version of this product has never really ever existed before because it was on a much larger slide. So what we're doing is we're basically making this big rock slide. And so all we're really doing from a sculpting standpoint is sculpting rocks. So not always the most glamorous thing, but it is what it is. So anytime I start a project, I have this already pre-set up. My entire slide kit is in a folder on its own, right? And so I will simply hop in and just get some geometry in here. Let's make sure. I want to change the color so I can see. And it's just some rocks. So I'm not going to use any fancy tools. I have tried to do procedural things with Blender, and I've gotten some pretty okay results. I'm still not 100% on it. Let me see if I can show that to y'all real quick. And I don't know if y'all can hear it. There's some music on here, and if it gets annoying to me, I'll shut it off. I don't know if y'all will be able to hear it at all. Um, like I said, I'm kind of new to the whole streaming thing, so I'll figure out all those little things. And please do tell me if there's something that's just like super annoying. Uh, Even if it's just me, that's okay. So, let me see. All right. Okay. So this is a kind of a procedural situation that I've been working on in Blender, trying to figure out. Okay, can I take some basic geometry in here, and can I get some pretty quick rocks? And to be perfectly honest, it's well, here's the cool thing. I can take this and then I can take its properties. So if I go Shift A, create, let me create a cube. And let's say I want to edit this cube, right? And Blender is not my strong suit. It will be soon enough though, because it's, you work with all these different programs, Maya, Max, and the like, and they effectively all do somewhat the same thing. Um, you just have to be able to work with them. So all I'm doing is creating some basic geo. Sorry if this is torture for anyone who knows what's going on here. All right. So we're going to do a quick extrude. All right. All I'm trying to do is get some basic geo. Can I shape this just a little bit? No, we're going to leave it as is. Okay. So I'm going to tab back over to object mode, and then I'm going to shift click and then what is it, Control L. We're gonna copy the modifiers. No. All right. Control L. Copy modifiers. There we go. Depends on which direction which way you select it. So let me back up. So what I did here is I said, okay, I want to assign the modifiers that this has onto this piece of geometry. So I'm going to click this one first, this one second, and I'm holding shift whenever I do that, and then I just hit Control L, and I'm going to go copy modifiers. There are entire tutorials on here that talk about how to do this. I'm not going to jump into all that right now, but what I've effectively done here is I've applied the procedural network that I put onto this rock onto this one. So with doing so, I basically have the rough shapes of some kind of rocky surface, right? And then if I want to, I can also go and say, all right, I need to well, 3D viewport. So I can also take my my textures and I can also apply that over. I'm not going to do all that in here. We're going to get into some sculpting in ZBrush real quick. So my whole point in this is that there is a way to make it somewhat procedural, and that may or may not shorten your time frame. Um, sometimes it's easier just to grab some geometry and just start making some freaking rocks, right? And so that's what we're going to do today. So we're done with that. I'm not going to save that. And we are going to hop on over into ZBrush and get cracking. Okay, so we're just going to use some simple tools here. We're going to use primitive geometry, some cutting tools, and some polish brush, and just some basic stuff. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is just kind of shape things around, figure out where my boundaries are. So let's do that. So I'm not going to worry about symmetry, not going to worry about any of that stuff, and I'm just going to do my best to bust this out as quickly as I possibly can. I find that the more that I sit around and try to think about it, the worse off things get. So let's get this into place and just start moving things around. What I'm doing here is, I'm not going to care about all this right here because I'm going to end up just shaping it all. We will take advantage of some mirroring, but let's see. So the first thing I want to do is I want to Dynamesh this thing. Dynamesh is your friend. Dynamesh is based upon the scale inside of ZBrush. ZBrush is natively in centimeters, so you just need to be conscious of that. It's not super huge, but depending on the scale of it, your resolution here and your scale is going to drive the resolution necessary inside of Dynamesh, right? So if you ever have if you have a situation where things aren't working out, it has to do with the scale, which means that you need to unify your geometry. It's probably not exactly the most helpful thing right now, but basically, I am just going to take this and I'm going to shape it around. I am not going to care about all the details right now. In fact, the lower the geometry, the better. So I'm going to use my handy dandy move brush. Shape this round. Don't care. Don't care if it's ugly. It's a rock. Rocks have feelings too. I know that this needs to encompass this whole little thing, right? I'll also have to make sure that it bridges over somewhere. I don't want to make it too chunky. I can't make it go out too far. And the reason why is because this, in real life, this segment right here is probably about, it's about 9 feet 10 inches long. So it's almost 10 feet long. And we have to make sure that we're able to ship this thing, that it's able to be crated, all that stuff. So you gotta, when you're designing for production, you have to know all these parameters. And if the people that you're designing for have not provided that information to you, you're gonna need to go get it, because there's nothing worse than going through and trying to design a thing and then having to go back and redo it all over again. And if you're doing freelance work, you need to know that stuff up ahead because that can really affect your bottom line, how many revisions you have to do, and all that. And those are all things that they do not teach you at art school for the most part, unless you've got like somebody that's really looking out for you. They don't focus on these things. They focus on what looks good and all that stuff. And while that's all important, you still have to be able to work in the real world because that's where this stuff is intended to exist. Unless it's like a painting or something like that. So I'm gonna keep it super basic. We'll start breaking it up here pretty soon. We just gotta get our core components here. So I need one side. I'm gonna go modify topology, mirror and weld. So now we have both of our sides. And then I want to bridge this. I want to add a piece that comes up through here. And I also want to make sure that we don't go too crazy with our height. So before I get there, I want to check this. This box here is basically kind of an envelope to tell me, hey, here are the upper ends of this thing. Also have this slide zone indicator here, and this just lets me know where things are going to hit. So I know that I need to be, a little bit forward of here. This right here, it represents the little barrier that I was talking about earlier, so that whenever a kid climbs up these steps, they don't just topple over. This is designed so the kid's head's going to be somewhere. In most cases, probably going to be up here. So they're going to have to sit down to be able to go, or they should have to sit down. Kids are going to do whatever they're going to do, but we try. So let's see. So I'm going to add a piece here. We're going to make it look a little craggy. Something like the Desert Southwest or something like that. So let me append another sphere. Make that active. I'm just going to keep transparency on for now. What am I doing? Scale this down. And honestly, working with primitives is going to be your best friend whenever it comes to some of this stuff, especially if you're working with like stylized stuff. It's just super fast. Well, I've even thought about just 3D printing these templates at a known scale, and then just applying clay to the surface and scanning it, just to kind of go a little bit the other direction. I don't know, I might try it one of these days just to see how it goes, see if it saves me any time. I don't know. It could just create, it'll definitely create a mess, but sometimes that's okay. All right. Now, we are not worried about symmetry at all. Nothing in this world is symmetrical. Except for things that people try to make. And I would question, well, things that look perfectly symmetrical are kind of weird. If you've ever seen those pictures of people that, go through and take celebrities' faces and edit them so that they're perfectly symmetrical, they look really strange. Really freaky, actually. That looks like it could be a rock. Okay. Now, so now this is kind of my we'll call this good. Let me double check my envelope here just to make sure. Why am I not able to? Oh, I need to select it. Oh, that's my reference cube. There we go. Okay. So we might want to bring this down just a little bit. It'll reduce some weight. These are going to be carved out of EPS, 1 pound EPS styrofoam, using a robot. It's like a 6-axis robot with a CNC mill on the end of it. All right, turn on transparency. We don't need the envelope anymore for now. We'll double check it later. So now I just want to kind of focus on how we blend all this stuff together. I'm going to go to polygroups, auto groups, because we want to break up the symmetry that we have going on here. At these stages, it's best just to like use a large brush, pull things around, and try to make big changes, because if you get too precious with a smaller brush, you're going to take forever, and it's probably not necessarily going to look that good at all. Also want to make sure that I account for the ground. So I'll always take things and I'll pull it past wherever the ground level is going to be, so that I know that I have enough material to be able to work around. As soon as you solve these problems, the faster it goes on the back end. Also want to make sure that whenever somebody slides off of this thing, that they don't have any tripping hazards or anything like that. Like whenever a kid gets off of a slide, they ought to be able to get out of the way as quickly as possible, because you know, you don't want some other freaking 40 to 60 pound kid or so come flying off that thing either. Take out your little one. Well, it might look funny. Don't feel too good. Okay. One problem with working with such low resolution is that you will run into a little bit of obliteration when you're smoothing. You can try and set the intensity down, maybe 2 or 3, and that should take some of the edge off. All intensity does in ZBrush is control how fast um, the brush arrives at the result that you're trying to get, or the result that is designed to get. It may not be what you're trying to get, but you get my point. All right. So now that we've kind of got this happening here, let's kind of get organized a little bit. I've learned over the years that, well, first of all, I'm not as it's no great statement that many artists are not exactly the most organized people, and I, for sure, am one of those. But you want to make sure that you categorize things properly. And the reason why is because when I take this later into, say, Substance Painter, I need to be able to quickly identify what is what. And this also applies. It's going to translate to Substance Painter, and it's going to translate to anything else that comes down the line, because my textures are going to be named according to whatever this specific object is. And if I have it just like subtool number whatever, that gets confusing really, really quickly, and I would like to save myself some torture there. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to make sure that I plug everything into that folder, so that way we stay nice and organized. And I'm not kicking myself later. And then also, I want to make sure that I save, because whenever it comes to ZBrush, you should be saving like you breathe. So let's see. I don't even know what we're calling it. Let's see. It's called the Big Double Bend Medium Slide. So we'll go ahead and set up my folders. Sorry, you guys probably can't even see this right now, but I just got to make sure that I have everything squared away before I get too far down the road. All right. So now from here, we're going to start slicing this up a little bit. So before I even go to Dynamesh, I'm just going to use my knife curve, because it'll get me some pretty interesting results, and it's great for stylization. Something else you can do is, if you have a hard time seeing, just switch to another material. Sometimes shiny material like this basic material too can really be helpful. that one, or just basic material. And then another tip is that you can set your light off to the side a little bit, and then that can help create some contrast. But when you're working with such low topology, you're going to get these facets, and that we might try to get away from this as soon as we can. Just trying to break it up. No. Of course it wants to save. I've learned a lot of the quirks of ZBrush over the years as I've been working with this program. And if it's gonna crash, it's usually gonna be whenever it's trying to save. So if you're ever working in there and it pops up saying autosave or what have you, just put your pen down and wait. Because if you don't, it's probably going to crash. And then you're going to have to wait some more. So just take my advice. I'm going to do a group split here. So I'm going to split this out into its two separate subtools. Okay. And we'll continue chopping up this surface. If we need more control, we might break it out into separate pieces. So I can break this down even further, but I want to try keep it simple. It's a little method. It's a KISS method. Stands for keep it simple, stupid. And that generally helps a lot because sometimes we can overthink the snot out of things and not really get anything done. And that's difficult whenever you're messing with these programs because it's so easy to hop down some rabbit hole and start sandboxing, which is good. It's good to sandbox. You need to hop in there and experiment and all the things, but when you have clients and people waiting on you, they don't care about all the cool nerdy 3D stuff that you are unpacking, right? They only care about the bottom line and their needs, things like that. And I'll tell you, I've worked with many clients over the years, and some are great, others not so much. But that's part of the game. think I've done about as much as I can before I go to Dynamesh. Kind of got some rough shapes, but we're going to need to break it up a little further. So I'm going to start with this top portion here. And I like to try and work a little bit non-destructive. So what I'll do is a couple things. When I save my files, you can do it one of two ways, or both, whichever works for you. The ZBrush project file can store all of your historical information all the way back to whenever you first started. You can set it up in the preferences here. Where are you? Config. Undo history. So in preferences under undo history, you can tell it the max undo available. Max undo size. So that's the max gigabytes that you could save per subtool, right? So if you basically if you do something, you've been sculpting for like 30 minutes and then you're like, yeah, I don't like any of this, and you drag it all the way back. This is your history slider right here. If I drag this all the way back more than 25, that's what it's currently set at, it'll kick a warning and be like, hey, are you sure you want to do this, because you're going to lose all that work. Sometimes it's better to simply duplicate that tool and then delete that history if you don't want to lose it. And the reason I say this is because if your ZBrush project file gets corrupted, if you rely on that one file, and for some reason gets corrupted, you've lost everything, every hour that you worked on that thing. Well, maybe not every, but most of it. And so I've learned over the years, because I've had this happen, that it's better for me to save out individual ZTLs. One, ZTool is going to be lighter in memory. ZTool is not going to save all of your history, but I can have some historical touch points. So what I'm getting at here is that I want to make sure that I have this base to go back to, right? And if I get to a certain point later and I'm like, hey, I'm going to save this snapshot of this thing here and then continue editing it, I want to make landmarks for myself in case something goes wrong later on. And that's only from my experience, because if it can go wrong, it will. That's just the way that it is. So I'm going to duplicate this file, here, and we're going to make sure that it's stored, okay, in my file. So I'm going to say, let's rename we'll keep this name for now. I just wanted to at least retain the base name. And so that's what we're going to do with each of these. We're going to end up duplicating. So let's go ahead and just duplicate the rock wall. Let me delete this real quick, because you got to stay organized. I know that I'll get lost if I don't. So if I'm looking at this from the front, I'm going to call this rock wall left. I'm going to call this one rock wall right. Okay. Now, whenever I duplicate this, it'll just give it, it'll rename it by, oh, come on, derp, duplicate. There we go. And that just keeps things it keeps things organized, no sweat. And the other good thing is that I can basically take this one here, this base one, and let's say I could go and ZRemesh, get my UVs and all that other stuff, which is going to be necessary at some point. But for right now, I'm not going to worry about that. I just want to focus on sculpting. But you do have to do a little bit of maintenance here. And so I'm going to turn off the base there. And then we will basically Dynamesh this whole thing. So whenever I go geometry, Dynamesh, I don't want to blur this thing. I do want to bump it up a little bit, and we'll see. We'll see how 128 does. It's a little too blurry, and it's only less than 3,600 points. So let's bring it up to 360. I don't want to blur it. I want it to try and maintain its shape as is. Okay. We're not going to go too much higher than that. The problem is that we're simulating clay here. ZBrush has always been, they call it using digital clay, and the more geometry that you add, the more problems that you're going to get. You only want high geometry to be able to get fine details, and that doesn't always exactly help while you're trying to shape things out. But you can see here, I'm just using some basic tools. I'm just using my knife curve to go through and break up this surface. Now, I mentioned earlier that I want to make sure that I'm designing something so that kids aren't able to climb up it. Or I'm designing this so I don't have any what would be considered designated play surfaces. Okay, so a designated play surface is like, imagine that you had like a 2-inch little square, like a little 2-inch plane, right? In fact, let me just make one real quick. I'm going to append a cube. Now, this isn't going to be to scale at all, but I'm just going to use it to make a point. So let's say this is my this is a 1-inch cube, so we can use this for reference a little bit. So it's got to be at least double. It's close, but it's not exact. Basically, they want to make sure that there's no space where this little thing can touch with all 4 points and be less than I believe it's 30 degrees, 32 degrees, something like that. So basically, as long as the surface is at a steep enough angle, this little thing can touch completely all day long. Because the idea is that if it's steep enough, then it should be pretty difficult to climb up. And so, in spaces where you want it to be less accessible, you want to make sure that either you're doing like a low relief or something that just doesn't something that doesn't create those little scenarios where a kid could go through and hurt themselves. So, just a side note. We'll call this that's what we'll call it. It's not, no idea what it's actually called. Let's go ahead and put that up in our little folder up here. That way we can save it for next time. There. While we're talking about saving, let's go ahead and save. So you're not going to be able to see this on the screen, but I just call it whatever its name is. Dash 1.0 will always be my first iteration, and then from there I'll go 1.1, 0.2, 0.3 until I run out of numbers there, and then I'll start at 2.0 and then keep going up. In some cases I will have all the way up to version 3.9 or something like that. It just depends on how complex the situation is. But I would rather do that than rely strictly on the ZBrush project files because they've failed me before. All right. So I've gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, we've broken up this surface. Sitting around and chopping away is cool and all, but I want to make some quick progress. So I'm going to hop into my brushes palette, hit comma on the keyboard, and you can get brushes one of two ways. You can hit B on the keyboard, and this brings up all your loaded brushes. But and we will use we're going to use this polish brush. So let me go ahead and click that. Make sure that it's already in the registry. So whenever I do hit B again, it will already be in my quick picks, right? So I have that. And then I'll also want to grab clay tubes, because that just, I like the way that it impacts the sculpts. Now I want to change my intensity, drop that down a bit, but I like the way that it adds to the surface. We can bring this up a bit. Something else that I'll do with this is I'll go to my stroke palette. I'm going to go to lazy mouse. I'm going to turn it on, but I'm going to drop the lazy step to something like 0.06, and you'll see immediately that it changes the dynamic of the brush. See? In fact, I'll put it 0.006. That way, it just really digs into the surface. I like using this because I can push and pull and make super quick changes, and then just go through and Dynamesh. Looks like Dynamesh turned off, so let's go back and there we go. And then let's bring up our intensity on our smooth. Shape that out a little bit. We're not going to go too crazy with the smooth because what we'll do is we'll come back over with our polish brush, right? That's one way to do it. You can also do BH. This H polish works really well at identifying the edges, and then you can just come back over and just make super fast changes. And I'm looking to break up this surface. No organization to it whatsoever. I don't care. It's a freaking rock. So you can hit the edges, this H polish. It'll really blast through these things, right? So we'll keep going over that like so. Trying to make quick work of this. I want to be done with this rock today. I do not want to waste much of my life dealing with this thing. Okay, so you also have your trim brushes, so trim dynamic and trim adaptive. I prefer dynamic most of the time. It just works for me. So it'll also cut into the surface. If you hold Alt, you can also add material. But I'm using this primarily to basically redirect the surface, change shape, things like that. So you can see it's getting a bit crunchy here on the side. That's okay. The truth is that once I get this all sculpted and done, I am making a reference effectively for people down the line. I've got to be able to show basically what a finalized product is going to look like, but because there are portions of this process that are going to be done by hand, it's never going to be 100%, right? We are going to carve this on a machine, but it gets finished by hand, and which is nice because, you know, while it might be similar, you know, if a customer buys a standard product, there are going to be slight little variants that make it unique for that particular client. But they're not so different that it's just a completely new product or anything like that, you know. So we're going to break up that surface, and then there's another brush that we want to use. So if I hit comma on the keyboard, we have these planar brushes that we could use. Do I have any of my orb brushes? I don't have my orb brushes loaded currently, but there are some other things that we could use. So mallet, where's our mallet? These are native to ZBrush, so if you're using any version of ZBrush, you should have access to these tools. I'm currently still on 2022. This acts like kind of a hammer, so you just hop in here and crack away at it. And you want to use these big tools like this just to get some results. You got to get in there and you got to get some work done. That's the way it is. You're making a rock. No need to make it any more complicated. Rocks are formed by pressure and heat and environmental situations. So we'll break that up. And basically the point of this is to break this surface up, and then we'll come back over with another tool like H polish in a second, so I'll go brush. H polish, and then I'll tighten up some of these corners here. And once we're done with ZBrush, this might not happen today, we'll basically take all of this and I will go over to Substance Painter to get my textures. And I'll also go over to Rhino to get my production quality, or my production surface. And whenever I do that, a lot of these little details I'm sculpting into this are kind of going to go away. So I'm not going to put too much into this, knowing that it's just going to get obliterated. But I do want to put enough information in there so that whenever that model out of Rhino is made, it'll get machined well. Before I get too carried away with this here, let me go check my slide zone. Yeah. So always have your tools readily available to make sure that you aren't doing a bunch of unnecessary changes. So I'm going to go grab my move brush, just kind of pull this around. And a little bit of an offset here. Let's also check my envelope. Okay, we're good there. Okay. Now I know that this is going to eat into this here a little bit. So for me, it just comes down to an aesthetic. Do I want this punching in too far or not? I'm going to try and avoid that. So that basically what it winds up as is that the kids climb up here. There's a little ledge that they can stand, and then they can sit down and just go down the slide. Okay. And then let's see what we can do right here. So I just need to grab verts and yank them around a little bit. See what happens. Another good tool to use to make that happen would be like your snake hook brush. So let's see. Just grab the regular old snake hook, and it's gonna give you this warning about, or not a warning, but to say it performs best with Sculptors Pro. That's cool, but I'm not gonna use it. just a quick way to make fast changes. Don't know if that's any better or worse. Come back over with some, turn off transparency so we can see. And so like I said, just a handful of tools goes a long way. H polish, just changing the direction of a surface really. I wouldn't worry about the geometry, so to speak, because that we'll deal with once we're satisfied with the overall look. With this sort of thing, it is good to have good geometry, if you can, because I also need to be able to throw this model into Lumion so I can add it to renders and things like that for visualization and stuff. So you do want to try and optimize your geometry as best as you can. Just with this here, that's not such a big deal. Not crazy about the shape. And I'm also not sure what to do about it exactly. You're going to run into that where you're like, I don't know what to do here. Just keep going. And eventually something will rear its ugly head. It's kind of what you do with life, right? You know. Find out there's not really any real rules. I mean, there are rules, but your approach to doing something is going to be so different from someone else's, more than likely. And sometimes you're stuck in a situation where you just gotta like make decisions. And the only way you really ever learn is just to go through and try stuff. Hopefully in an educated fashion, because some experiments in life are not don't have the most pleasant results. I'm not talking about, you know, testing every hot oven that you walk across. Okay. So we're going to move on to the next little rock. I'm not going to make this super defined yet. And like I said, I'm not going to make it like we're not going for Hollywood video game quality here. We're going for what can be carved on a machine and finished by hand. That's what we're working on. So let's see, we're going to work on this one. Let's make sure we're using all one poly group. Whoa. And then let's go ahead and Dynamesh it. Nope. Okay. So right away, I'm just gonna hit it with the mallet. Break this up. And when I say hit it, I mean just knock the snot out of this stuff. And don't worry about the surface or any of that. That's going to resolve itself. It's a dumb rock. It's dumb, but it's just a rock. Move this out a little bit. Make sure I don't obliterate that too much. Okay. Now, back to this. Now we're going to go back to our H polish. Try and work these shapes in. H polish is really good for other things like if you look at some of my older videos back whenever this channel was called Z Fever, I did a bunch of demos on how to get use these tools to get like smooth surfaces, smooth transitions, compound contours and things like that. You might have to change the size of the brush just to be able to control it a little bit more. But don't go too crazy with it. truth be told, is that I don't need to put a ton of detail into this because my painters, whenever it gets out to the paint shop, they're going to go through and add details by hand. But I do need to be able to give them some guidance. It's a balance between sculpted detail and painted detail. And I'll tell you, when you're working in a production environment, you're going to run across different kinds of people, and you know, they're going to come from different backgrounds. It's not a novel thing to say, but we all know that you work anywhere, you're going to run into people who come from different backgrounds. But the point I'm trying to make is some people have ideas about how things ought to be produced, right? And when you're working in these corporate environments, some people have experience and they mean well, but they're not designers, and they're not thinking about how contrast and all that stuff work. They're only thinking about, how can I save the company money? How can I do this as quickly as possible? And how can I get on to the next job or whatever as quickly as I possibly can? Which sucks a little bit because it can kind of be soul crushing whenever you're a designer and you're working in an environment where people are just like, just make me a thing. I don't care what it looks like. Yeah. But thankfully, I've got some good employers who like for things to look good. But you're gonna have people that just don't understand processes, and it's really important as a designer. It's important for you to understand the processes, which means that you need to be aware of who is impacted by the design decisions that you make. And you need to be able to have healthy conversations with people about, what's going to work and what isn't. In 3D, we all know that sometimes you'll get a concept from someone that just isn't going to work in the round. It's just not. Doesn't mean you completely obliterate it, but you have to definitely make sure that you communicate with those people. Hey, this isn't, or this is going to work, or what have you. Some people try to take shortcuts with things. In this line of work, sometimes people will try and just grab things off of a 3D marketplace. It's basically placeholders to be able to try and sell a concept, which can be good and not good at the same time, because if the concept that you show to them is drastically different from what actually comes out of production, you can be in some trouble. People are paying real money for something to be produced. If you go to a Chevy dealership and you say, hey, I want a Corvette, you expect a freaking Corvette. You expect it to look like the Corvette that you saw on the marketing materials. You also expect it to drive like a freaking Corvette. And if you don't get that, then I would say that you have good reason to be not happy with the product that you got. And so you have kind of two ways of going about all this. If you're making art For cell, you're the one that's in the driver's seat, and you just say, hey, well, let me back up. If you're making your own artwork for cell, then you're in the driver's seat, and you're the one who says, this is what my designs are, and that's that. However, if you are doing contract work and somebody is paying you money to help them reach their creative goals, then they're in the driver's seat. And if you sell them a thing, saying, or you sell them a concept, an idea, and then whatever comes out of production is not that thing, then one, it doesn't look good on you. Two, they might come back and say, you're going to redo this whole thing because this is not what you sold me, right? Where did I get off on this? Oh, details. So I was saying I was not going to put a ton of detail. I'm going to let the painters handle some of this. But you need to be able to balance between contrast and paint. So light is going to handle a lot of shadows if you do it correctly. If you have like a low or even a somewhat high relief, somewhere in between, any amount of relief is going to cast a shadow. And you can use that to your advantage. So instead of going through and sculpting in a ton of freaking detail, you can do a low relief or low detail and then come back over and paint some of that stuff in, and it'll look just fine. But I've had situations in the past where, for the sake of expediency, somebody would say, okay, I want the entire surface of this thing completely smooth, and we're going to do all this stuff by paint. Well, all that does is shift all that detail from the sculpts to the painters, and that doesn't always look so great, obviously. All right. All right. So same thing. We're just going to crack away at it with this mallet brush. It's already noon here, so I'm going to get this locked in. We're going to take a break for a little while. Then we'll be back. And while I'm on break, I'll probably install but I'll install the orb brush pack, which is a really good way. It was designed by, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but a gentleman that worked for Blizzard. A good way to get really fast rocks and stuff like that. So I will get all that installed whenever I break here in a little bit. Probably take about a 45-minute break, then we'll be back. So break up this surface as much as possible. Don't care how pretty it is. Also want to make sure that paying attention to my boundaries here. Okay. Let's grab our H polish. I'm probably going to go, I don't know, I want to break this up a little bit, but I don't want to get too craggy. And the reason I say that is because the tool that's going to be carving this, the bit on it is like a 1/2 inch. So it's not going to get super fine detail in the first place. Now there are, once it comes off a machine, there's some processes that happen after that. Foam carvers will go through and they'll add some sculpted detail, but it ultimately gets covered with a hard coat that can add up to, well, depends. If it's just the hard coat, the standard hard coat, it can add up to almost 1/4 of an inch of material around the entire surface. And so what that does is it fills out a lot of these things. So if you want details to be there, you have to really accentuate them. For one, and then the other half of it is that sorry, I wanted to get this knocked out. The other half of that is it's hard to control. So if you have deep crevices and things like that, because of the way that it sprays in there, it won't necessarily get down into the crevices or anything. Now the painters or the foam carvers, it's basically just prop making really, and foam is well, there's certain things you can do to it, like you can hit it with some acetone or something like that, and it'll eat away that foam, right? Or you can take a like a hair dryer or a heat gun or something like that to the surface, and it'll soften it up, melt it away, and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do to add details, but ultimately, if you go to a certain point, all of that detail ends up getting filled in anyway, and then you have to rely on paint to basically finish making it look good. So you just have to understand your processes, when you're working for, if you're making miniatures and things like that, and you're printing in resin and you want all the sculpted detail, that's where you want to make sure that you put it all in there. If something's going to be some super low poly situation, maybe you don't go and add all those details. Or if you're going to be in production like this is going to be, and all that detail is going to end up getting obliterated anyway, maybe don't spend too much time being super aggressive about it. All right, so I think this is probably a good place to stop for now. We got ourselves a kind of a rock. It's like a big pile of poo. Um, so we're gonna take this, and then whenever we come back here in about an hour or so, what we'll do is we will basically take this and move it further along, maybe add a little bit more, but we're going to try and move from this to getting everything kind of welded together, get ourselves some geometry that we can work with, and then get it ready for paint. And we'll see how far we get with that today.